the center of Israel. We just came out of a shelter 10 minutes ago, um, but we are okay. We are fine, and we are very happy to have you all here together with us. Whether you are in North America, South America, in Europe, wherever you are, we are very happy to have you here as part of the Bar-Ilan community, Bar-Ilan family, if I may say. And today we are going to hear a short lecture by Professor David Passig, which will concentrate on the future. It will concentrate on the future of what's going to happen, because we believe that we are in moments that we can turn our position right now into a much, much better future. And I hope that that's what we are going to hear from Professor Passig. Um, I will tell you that we are in a very complex and very sensitive moment right now, but the spirit over here is relatively good. Um, we feel we feel okay in Israel. Our role is mainly to keep the people who are a little bit losing some of their confidence and some of their ability to stable their life in this situation, pull them into the center, and keep the community ongoing. This is our main goal right now. I think that we are doing it successfully, at least within the border of the university. We are teaching, we are doing research, our students are with us, and we shall overcome this situation as we always did. And I'm sure that your help will be there, but I know that your support, even being here with us at this moment, is critical for our feeling, and I will convey it to the campus. I will now transfer the microphone to my good friend, Mr. Zekelman, chairman of Bar-Ilan University Global Board, and he will address the talk, um, and we will have a chance at the end to say a few words. Ellen, please.
Thank you, Professor Zaban. It's crucial that we're coming together today at a time when the people of Israel are at the forefront of our hearts and minds. We pray for their safety and we maintain hope for a more peaceful future. At Bar-Ilan University, our students, faculty, and staff are at the very heart of what we do. They thrive in a campus environment that challenges them intellectually, supports them personally, and empowers them to contribute meaningfully to Israel and to the world. Today, with the prolonged war in Gaza, now amplified by the current events in the region, the importance of the university's role has grown exponentially. Thanks to the ironclad support system provided by Bar-Ilan, our students will continue to rise above today's challenges and become tomorrow's leaders. It's now my privilege to introduce today's special presenter, Professor David Passig, from the Bar-Ilan faculty. As a futurist, high-level consultant, and best-selling author, Professor Passig is uniquely positioned to explore today's crisis through the lens of tomorrow's possibilities. He has consulted in Israel, Asia, Europe, and North America. He served as the chief advisor to the Commissioner for Future Generations in Israeli Knesset and is a member of the Israeli National Council for Research and Development. During this webinar, he'll offer us strategic insights into what may lie ahead for Israel and the broader region. Professor Passig, thank you so much for joining us today. We're quite eager to hear your perspective on the unfolding developments in the region.
Thank you so much. Well, I would like to divide my presentation into three parts in order to understand what might happen in the next few weeks. We need to understand the driving forces of what's happening now. And actually, there are three tiers that are really driving what's happening at this very moment. The largest scope of what's happening worldwide, specifically what's happening in Iran, and more specifically, what are the tactics that we are going to see in the next few weeks around this conflict. So let me start with the driving force, the world affairs that are behind the scene of this very specific conflict, because this very specific conflict is just one facet of something much bigger that is in the making right now in human history. Generally speaking, the world order, as we have seen it in the last 80 years, is crumbling. And that world order was devised by the winners of World War II. And the idea of the world order, which we have called globalization, was to open the world so that trade will be smooth as much as possible all over this planet. And the idea behind that strategy was that if everybody will feel that any need they need, anything they would like to have can be reached through negotiation means and not through very aggressive means, which was the usual thing for millennia. The idea was if everything will be open, if trade will be open, if there won't be borders, if there won't be any customs to any resource, then the flames that used to be the driving force of many conflicts during millennia will somehow be contained, and we will enter an era of great peace and great interchange culturally, economically, etc. That assumption is probably crumbling because of many reasons, and the main reason is that besides the economic drive and the resources need of different communities on this planet, there are other variables that were not taken into account when they have devised that great idea of what we have called globalization. One of them, of course, is the tension between cultures. The others is the tension between great ideologies and even religions. So we are at the very specific moment in which there are a few nations that believe that we need to fine-tune the global system. At this very moment, I'm speaking with you from Panama City. I'm overlooking the entrance of the Panama Canal, which I see a huge line of cargo ships, huge cargo ships that are waiting to pass on the canal. And this is just another choke point on this planet that is going to cause a lot of troubles. And this was actually the idea also behind how aggressive Trump was lately, even with Panama and with other nations, as you are all aware of. So the crumbling world order that is already in the making during the last at least decade is part of what we are seeing now in the Middle East. And since we are all familiar what's happening in different places, I don't want to elaborate, but the idea that we are in such a conflict is because the great powers on this planet are competing about how to reorganize world order in the remaining years of the 21st century. And that competition brings a lot of tensions in different places worldwide. The great powers of the 21st century are frightened from the possibility that humanity will use nuclear power. And therefore, their probably only tactic is to use proxies in different places in order to bring their stand into the negotiation table of a lot of issues that concern world order. So this is a larger view. And specifically, what's happening in the Middle East is the following. There is a tendency now to reorganize the world in clusters of nations. Everybody feels that that idea of global openness is not providing food security and energy security. So we are at a stage in history in which nations are organizing themselves in clusters in order to provide some kind of security in case something global will happen. And one of those clusters is the Middle East cluster of nations that has the title of the Abraham Accords. That cluster of nations that is being built, its intention, its goal is very clear. Its goal is to be a counterbalance to another cluster of nations that are also competing about their stand in the next definition of world order. And because that cluster that is being developed in the Middle East is really very important in the next 2-3 decades in the competition between the great powers, there are some nations that are very afraid from that accord. And of course, Iran is one of them that is afraid from that accord. And behind Iran, there is Russia, and behind Russia, and besides Russia, there is also China. So you see that we are in a situation in which what's happening now in the Middle East is part of a very large competition that is happening, trying to reorganize the parties all over the world in some clusters in order to have a better stance when they will be coming to reorganize and to sign and define the new world order that will take humanity into further into the 21st century. This is the large picture. Now, specifically, what we see in the Middle East is having another tier. There is another facet that is in the making and is the driving force of this conflict, and this is what we call the variables that are frightening nations. Most of the people, when they think about conflicts, they think that what drives conflict are only resources and economic interest, etc. From our point of view, when I say our point of view, I speak from a futuristic kind of perspective. We tend to understand the driving forces of conflicts in a different way. We believe that there are 6 variables that are, when they are combined together, they are the real driving forces to any nation, any leader, to take aggressive actions against whoever they are competing with. All those 6 variables are variables that are really frightening us as a species. So these 6 variables are how our topography, the way the soil that we are put in, the way it is curved, is having a great impact on on the frightening things that are frightening us from our neighbors. That's one variable. The other variable, of course, are our borders. The third variable is demographic variables. There are other variables like scientific variables and technological variables, and the sixth one is resources, what everybody speaks about as economic interests. With this methodology, we were able to foresee many conflicts that are happening in the last 20, 30 years all over the world. So if I am to analyze the Middle East with this methodology, then the best way to go is to try to list what is frightening, for example, Israelis, what's frightening Iranians. And here, as we are all familiar with, the Jewish people has a very clear list of what is frightening for them. Of course, the Holocaust is in the background, but we are frightened from demographic issues that are happening around us and within us. We are frightened from economic issues that are providing us with some food security and energy security, and of course, many other variables that are part of those variables. Now, the other side also has a list of things that are frightening them. And if I am to list the variables that are frightening the Iranians, then I won't have time here for the next hour or two. There is a very long list of things that are frightening the Iranians, and that's the reason that they are very aggressive. And that's the reason they will continue to be aggressive. It's the same thing with us in Israel. There is a long list of things that is frightening us, and because of that list, we will be aggressive, and that aggressiveness is beginning to be even cruel from time to time. So let me just state a few variables that where most of us are not aware of, that are frightening and devastating the psyche of the Iranian regime. It's not only the Iranian regime, it's this more specifically whoever live in that region we call now Iran. One of them is, of course, the water scarcity. They really don't have enough water to sustain a population of more than 80 million people. And they are competing with water resources. Now, pay attention to what's happening in that part of the world. Iranians are not aggressive only towards us or towards the Sunni communities or the Sunni nations. They are even aggressive against Shiite nations that are in their neighborhood. And the reason is because they are afraid that those nations will cut off the water resources that are coming from their country into Iran, in order to, of course, to be somehow secure. And we are all familiar of how important is water for any human soul and human existence. This is only one issue, and there is no way to develop a technology that can sustain a community or a nation with 80 or 90 million people with desalination. That's impossible. Israel can do it because we are very small and we can invest, and that investment will be worthwhile because we are a very small nation that can provide a large portion of their needs through desalination. That's one variable that is really frightening Iran. The other variable, for example, is the competition between the Shiites and the Sunnis. This is a real competition. This is not just like within the Jewish people a matter of nuances. This is really a very important narrative, the two different narratives of what Islam is, that they are competing already for 1400 years. And during those 1400 years, the Shiites were battled by the Sunnis, they were slaughtered by the Sunnis. And the Iranians, as a Shiite nation, are recovering from a very long time that they were the underdog, and they would like to be much more safe in the new era of human history. And in order to be safe, they need to take care of their security. And the only way to be safe, as they see it, is to develop a technology or an industrial and scientific infrastructures that will be able to compete with the Sunnis nations that are around them. So this is another variable. For example, there are other variables, like if you take a look at Iran from above, you see that Iran has a very unique topography. It's a kind of a castle. In the middle, there is a huge desert, and around that desert, there are huge mountains that are almost impenetrable. And the problem with that castle, even though it's a castle that gives you some feeling of safety, the problem is that it's very hard to sustain a large population on those mountains. They need open space, they need to trade outside, they need a large amount of soil in order to have agriculture that will sustain that population. And the reason they are pushing forward into Iraq, for example, and into the Middle East even, is to have new terrains from within, to bring other resources and to have a more food security, etc. And if I am to go and enlarge on the list of things that are frightening the Iranians, really I won't have time in this very short webinar. I did this study a few years ago in order to list almost all the frightening variables that are driving Iranians to behave the way they are behaving. The idea of that study was to see if, for example, the world community and also Israel can address those fears and bring down their fears in order for them to be less aggressive. But all those fears are driving Iranians to be very aggressive. If you wish, even though it's not an easy thing to do, take for example us as Israelis, as a Jewish people, because of our fears, the world doesn't understand what we are doing at the moment, and they are blaming us for genocide, and they are blaming us of aggressiveness, etc., etc. But we are driven by fears. The same thing is with with Iran. Iran is a huge power that is emerging, and they are driven by a lot of fears. One other fear that nobody is paying attention to is the demographic fear of the Iranians. And by the demographic fears, I mean that the fertility rate, for example, of the Iranians just 50 years ago was more than 6 kids for each female. Okay, the replacement rate of a society is about 2.1 kids for each female. They have went down less than 2.1 kids for each female, but around 1.6 kids for each female. That feeling of shrinking of a society, a culture that believes that they are unique, that they have a lot to contribute to humanity and to their surrounding, and they have a very long history of cultural greatness. That feeling that they might shrink and go down in demographically is also another variable that drives them to be very aggressive and drives them to look for new population to merge with and bring them within their culture. So these are a few fears that are driving the Iranians. More specifically, of course, is that they would like to have a nuclear power to prevent others from attacking them. And they have it's written in their genes that time after time after time, the Sunnis will be very cruel with the Shiites. And they came to a time in history that they say that they need to be powerful enough so that the Sunnis will not take advantage of them again as they did during centuries. This is what drives them to develop a nuclear power. And it's not Israel, it's not against Israel, it's basically against the Sunni world. And of course, when you have such a powerful tool, then your appetite becomes much larger, and you're not seeking only your first intentions. You believe that you can achieve more than you thought at the beginning, and this is what frightens the West and what frightens Israel, of course, from this point of view. Now, this is a way to understand what drives this conflict. Again, there is the larger scope, the larger perspective of what's happening worldwide in history. There is the regional perspective, as I said now. And now I would like to touch upon their battle doctrine. They have used that battle doctrine in the last 2 decades at least with their proxies, and they are going to use that same battle doctrine in the next 2-3 weeks. I believe that this conflict will be will stretch at least another 2 or 3 weeks until it will get some stand from which there will be negotiations in order to develop and continue developing the relationships between Israel and the Iranians, the Iranians and the Sunni world, and the Sunni world more specifically with the Western world. So we are at the midst of something that is going to be shaped in the next 2-3 weeks based on their battle doctrine. And I'm going to briefly describe their battle doctrine. They understood that in order to bring to its knees any democratic country, actually, and more specifically Israel as a democratic nation, is to try and break that bond that exists between the citizens, their army, and their leadership. There is a bond that in the democratic countries that the citizen know that the army works for him or for her, and the leadership with the army are working for the betterment of the life of their citizens. It's exactly the opposite as in many other autocratic countries in which the the citizen is actually a tool of the army and of their leadership. So the best way they found to break that bond between those three parties in the democratic world is to shoot missiles in a manner that every day there will be 100 to 200 missiles that will will stretch the feelings of the citizens, and they will start arguing against their army and against their leadership that they cannot stop that way of attacks. We have seen it with Hezbollah, we have seen it with Hamas. Their idea was to stretch as much as possible the conflict in a manner that every day 100, 200, 300 missiles, and for many, many weeks as much as possible. And that will break the confidence between the citizen and their army, and of course and their decision makers. And the citizenship will put a lot of stress on their armies and their leadership so that they will stop that conflict and will provide and will give the enemy whatever they want in order for them to stop that that aggressiveness. This is, in a nutshell, a very large battle doctrine that was developed in the last few decades. It has been exercised in different places worldwide. It has been exercised in Israel. It has some outcome and some, from their point of view at least, some positive outcomes. In the last year and a half, it didn't work for them very well. But since it looks like that they don't have a new battle doctrine, that's what we're going to see in the next 2-3 weeks. They will continue shooting missiles to Israel every day, 200, 300 missiles in different timings, so that the population will cry and will come up against their military, against their leadership, in order for them to try to stop the conflict and give the Iranians some of what the Iranians are looking for. This is basically what we might see in the next 2-3 weeks. Now, I'm stressing another point. Since everybody knows that you always somehow know how a war starts, and nobody can even imagine how a war develops, it's very hard to imagine that things will work out as planned, not from the Israeli point of view and not from the Iranian point of view. Things are very dynamic, but each nation will try to stick to its battle doctrine. Israel has a very clear battle doctrine at the moment. It's not that this is not the place to elaborate on it, but everybody can imagine. Part of it is not to be afraid from stretching conflict, the assumption that Israel cannot hold in conflicts that are stretched more than a few weeks. That assumption has somehow collapsed, and but still there are a lot of people in democratic countries that cannot even sustain a conflict or a battle that stretch more than a few days or 1 or 2 weeks. So this is what we're going to see. Again, we're going to see part of the populate in Israel that will start to be very vocal against what Israel doing in Iran. And at the end, it will be at some point that the world will put a lot of pressure on Israel to stop. The citizenship in Israel will put a lot of pressure for the leadership to stop. But at the meantime, and this is why probably Israel is very aggressive at the beginning without any hesitation, because Israel knows that the timeline of this conflict will not be stretched more than 2 or 3 weeks. I hope that it will not take more than 2 to 3 weeks, but still, this is probably what we're going to see for a long time. A long time from this point of view, of course, is 2 to 3 weeks. I don't believe that it will be much more than that, but I hope that after this round of aggression, the cards are going to be very different, and the negotiations will take a very different route. Israel is becoming not just a regional superpower. Because of this conflict, Israel is taking a stand that it's more than a regional superpower, and it will have a great effect on how other Sunni nations are going to sign the Abraham Accords. I believe that some very positive outcome is going to come up from this activity. I believe that my time is over, and I would appreciate it if you have any questions. I'm here to try and answer, and this is what we can do in a matter of 25 minutes.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Ronnie Vinnikov, Vice President of Development at Bar-Ilan University. Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and of course to you, Professor Passig, for his timely and thought-provoking insights. I would like to thank our team at Bar-Ilan and at American Friends of Bar-Ilan who worked diligently to put this briefing together. Professor Passig, from the audience, one of the questions that we have received a few minutes ago is like that. How do you see last week's escalation affecting Israel's relationships with key international allies in the near future?
Well, I can only try and compare it to historical events, other historical events. Always, winners are being forgiven to anything they are doing. If you are a winner in a campaign, then the world is actually addressing you as a winner, and they forget everything they were thinking about you before that. This is something that has happened for millennia in history. I hope that Israel will be a winner. If we will not win this kind of war, then the relationships will be much, much harsher against Israel. If we will come up as winners, everybody will forget it and will align with Israel in order to see eye to eye the way we understand how the next phase of world order need to be in order to stop these vicious cycles of aggression in human history.
Thank you so much. What makes Bar-Ilan so remarkable is not just our academic excellence. It's the ecosystem of support, belief, and partnership that surrounds us. Since October the 7th, and especially in these last few days, the strength of our global Bar-Ilan family has been a true anchor. Your solidarity has meant everything to us. At this moment, I would recognize something powerful. In uncertain times, philanthropy is not just about giving, it is about standing with us. It is a partnership rooted in trust, in shared values, and in a belief that education, science, and community can be engines of national renewal. And I want to thank you for being our trusted, invaluable partners in this. Together, we're not only helping Bar-Ilan get through this moment, We are helping it lead through this moment. On behalf of our students, our faculty, and all of us at Bar-Ilan, thank you. We pray for the safety of our soldiers and for the swift return of all our hostages. We will move forward together. We will build forward together. Am Israel Chai.